Rain had just stopped falling over the quiet town when Leora stepped out of the cab. Her umbrella was broken and her dress was damp at the edges, but she tried to look confident. Her friend had arranged a blind date for her, something Leora had never done before. She looked up at the glowing sign of the restaurant, Éclisse Noire. It was an old place, built of stone and warm light. The windows glowed golden against the gray night, and the sound of a slow violin came from inside. Leora took a deep breath and walked in, clutching a small rose in her hand, the sign her date was supposed to recognize. She scanned the tables nervously. Candlelight shimmered across faces, laughing couples, quiet strangers, clinking glasses. She saw a man sitting alone in a corner, tall, elegant, and distant. His eyes caught hers, calm but unreadable, like dark water that hid something deep beneath. She thought he looked kind of out of place, too formal for the evening crowd. A black suit, silver ring, and a quietness around him that made others keep their distance. "Excuse me," she said softly, walking up to him. "Are you Daniel?" The man looked at her for a long moment. His eyes were a strange gray, almost silver under the candlelight. Then he gave a small, polite smile. "I could be," he said in a calm, low voice. Leora laughed awkwardly and sat down. She placed the rose on the table. "I'm Leora. I hope I'm not too late." He shook his head. "You're right on time." They ordered tea and sat in silence for a while. Leora tried to fill the air with small talk. How her week had been. How she didn't usually go on blind dates. The man listened, his gaze never leaving her face. His manner was strange and both gentle and powerful, like someone used to being obeyed but unsure how to be relaxed. When he finally spoke, his words were soft but carried weight. "You shouldn't sit with strangers so easily," he said. "The world hides many things." Leora blinked, unsure if he was joking. "Well, you don't seem dangerous," she said, trying to smile. He didn't answer. But his lips curved faintly, and for the first time she saw something almost human behind his stillness. Amusement or maybe curiosity. As the evening went on, they talked more. Leora told him about her small apartment, her love for painting, her boring office job. He listened with quiet interest, asking simple questions that somehow felt deep. When she asked about him, he hesitated. "I'm older than I look," he said with a small, distant smile. "And I have many responsibilities." His words sounded strange, but his voice was warm. Leora felt oddly safe around him, though she didn't know why. He looked at her like someone studying a secret. When she laughed, he tilted his head slightly, as if the sound was something unfamiliar. "You have a kind laugh," he said softly. "It doesn't belong in a place like this," Leora blushed. "You mean the restaurant?" "No," he said, his gaze holding hers. "I mean this world." His tone sent a shiver through her. But she didn't feel afraid, only drawn closer. The rain began again outside, tapping gently against the windows. Leora felt like the world had shrunk to this small candlelit corner. Two strangers arose between them, and a feeling that neither could name. When the meal ended, Leora realized hours had passed. The restaurant was nearly empty. She looked at the time and gasped. "Oh, I didn't even check my phone." "I hope I didn't keep you too long." The man smiled faintly. "No, I haven't had company like this in centuries," she laughed again. "You talk like a poet." He gave a quiet hum, eyes thoughtful. "Maybe I am." When the waiter came, the man paid before she could even reach her purse. His hand brushed hers lightly as he handed her coat. Cold as snow, yet it made her heart race. Outside, the night had grown misty. The rain had slowed to a silver drizzle. He walked her to the street, stopping beneath a lamppost. The glow turned his face soft, almost unreal. "I never got your name," Leora said. He paused. For a moment he looked unsure whether to tell her. Then he spoke quietly. "Kyle." It felt like a name from an ancient story. She smiled. "Well, thank you, Kale. You are a wonderful knot, Daniel." He looked at her rose, still in her hand. "Keep it," he said. "You might need it again." She didn't understand what he meant, but his words lingered. She turned to leave, but something made her glance back. He was still there, standing under the lamp, the mist curling around him like smoke. His silver eyes followed her until she disappeared from sight. That night, Cale returned to his hidden mansion at the edge of the city. The grand halls were silent. He walked past portraits of old kings and his own face among them, In a dim chamber lit by moonlight, a tall woman awaited him. Lady Sereth, his advisor. "You broke the rule," she said sharply. "You spoke with a mortal." Cale removed his gloves and sat down, his face unreadable. "She came to me by mistake." "There are no mistakes in fate," Sereth said coldly. "She carries light, the kind that awakens what you buried long ago. You should stay away before she destroys everything." Cale closed his eyes. The memory of Leora's laughter echoed in his mind like music after centuries of silence. "I know what I must do," he said quietly, "but I cannot unhear her voice." Sereth's eyes glowed faintly red. "The curse sleeps, my king. Do not make it wake." Cale said nothing. He looked out through the tall window where the moon hung low like a silver coin. For the first time in many years, he felt something move inside his hollow chest, something like longing or pain. Days passed. Leora couldn't stop thinking about Cale. Her real blind date, Daniel, later messaged her, apologizing for not showing up. She laughed to herself. Maybe the wrong table had been the right one after all. One evening, she returned to Éclisse Noire. The same candlelight, the same violin music, and the same quiet corner, empty now. She hesitated, then left a note on the table, "In case you ever want tea again." Leora, she placed her rose beside it and left. That night, Cale found the note. He read it slowly, his cold fingers tracing the handwriting. For a long time he stood there in silence, then he whispered, "You shouldn't have come back." But there was sadness in his voice, not anger. The rose on the table suddenly began to wilt, its petals turning black at the edges, a sign of the curse stirring. 2 nights later, Leora was walking home from work. The streets were quiet, mist curling around every lamp. She heard footsteps behind her. "Cale," she called softly, half hopeful, half afraid. He stepped from the fog, tall, graceful, dressed in shadow and moonlight. "You shouldn't be here," he said. His voice was low, heavy with worry. Leora frowned. "You make it sound like I've done something wrong." Kyle took a step closer. The air around him seemed colder. "You don't understand. My world is not meant to touch yours." She looked up at him, her eyes bright in the mist. "Then why did you let me sit with you that night?" He hesitated. "Because for a moment I forgot what I am." Leora didn't move. Her heart was beating fast, but she didn't run. "And what are you, Cale?" she whispered. He looked at her as if searching for courage. His silver eyes caught the light, and for an instant she thought she saw a flicker of red deep within them. "I am not what you think," he said. "If you stay near me, your light will fade." Her voice trembled. "Then why do you sound afraid?" Cale's jaw tightened. "Because I already feel the curse waking." A sudden wind swept the street. The lamps flickered and Leora stumbled. She scraped her hand on the ground, just a small cut, but a drop of blood fell on Kyle's palm as he helped her up. The world changed. The air grew thick and cold. Shadows moved like living things. Cale's eyes glowed crimson for a heartbeat before he turned away, covering his face. "Go," he said sharply, his voice echoing with strange power. Leora froze, terrified but unable to leave. "Kyle, what's happening?" He took a step back, pain in his eyes. "You should not have touched me." And then, in a swirl of black wind, he vanished, leaving only silence and the faint scent of roses. Leora stood alone in the mist, her heart breaking and her mind full of questions. The rose in her pocket had turned cold. She whispered to the night, "What are you?" The shadows gave no answer. The next morning, Leora woke with a strange feeling in her chest. Her dreams had been filled with fog, moonlight, and a soft voice whispering her name. When she looked at her hand, the small cut was gone, but a faint silver mark now glowed there like the shape of a tear. She tried to ignore it, but the world around her felt different. The sky seemed darker, the shadows deeper, and every time she passed a mirror, she thought she saw a pair of silver eyes watching her. For days, Kyle didn't appear. She told herself to forget him. He was just a mysterious stranger who had disappeared into the mist. But her heart refused to listen. Each night, she dreamed of him standing under a dark sky, reaching for her but never touching. One evening, as she walked home through the old park, she heard the sound of a violin, the same melody from Éclisse Noire. The music seemed to come from nowhere, echoing through the trees. Then she saw it, a single black feather, shining faintly under the lamplight. When she picked it up, A cold wind rushed past her and the world began to fade. The lights of the city dimmed. The ground trembled. Shadows curled around her feet, pulling her into darkness. When she opened her eyes, she was standing in another world. The sky was covered with silver clouds. Dark castles rose in the distance, their towers sharp as spears. Rivers of mist flowed across the black fields, and pale lights floated through the air like lost souls. Leora's heart raced. She turned and saw him. Kyle. He stood on a stone bridge wearing the same black coat, his eyes no longer silver but faintly glowing red. A crown of dark metal rested upon his head, a crown that looked both beautiful and heavy with sorrow. "You should not be here," he said quietly. His voice echoed across the still air. "I didn't choose to come," Leora said, her voice trembling. "Something pulled me." Kale's eyes softened for a moment. "It seems fate has a cruel sense of humor." He stepped closer. "This is my world, Leora, the Obsidian Court, a place that lives under the earth where time stands still." Leora looked around in awe and fear. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Kyle gave a small, sad smile. "It is also a prison." He led her through the grand gates into his castle. The halls were vast and silent, filled with mirrors that reflected no image. Servants in gray robes bowed as he passed, their faces pale and distant. At the end of the hall stood a throne made of stone and silver vines, the cursed throne. Leora felt its cold power from across the room. "What is this place, really?" she asked softly. Kale hesitated before answering. "Once it was a kingdom of light. I was its protector. But long ago I made a terrible choice and the light turned against me." He looked up at the ceiling where cracks glowed faintly like stars. "I wanted to save my people from dying, so I asked the night for help. It gave me power, but it took my soul in return." Leora listened, her heart heavy. "And now you're a king without life," he finished quietly. "A ruler of shadows. A heart that beats only for the curse that owns it." Silence filled the hall. Leora looked at him, the sadness in his eyes, the weight on his shoulders, and she saw not a monster, but a man who had carried sorrow for centuries. "Maybe the curse can be broken," she said. Kale turned away. "Not by mortals. Then why did I come here?" she whispered. He looked at her again, pain flickering in his gaze. "Because your light calls to mine, and that light is the one thing the curse fears." Days passed in the Obsidian Court. Leora stayed near Kale, even when he warned her to keep her distance. She painted the empty halls with colors she found in the strange flowers of his realm. She spoke to him of human things, rain, laughter, music. And slowly, Kale began to change. He laughed once, quietly as if surprised by the sound. He smiled more often, and the shadows in the corners of his eyes grew softer. But the peace did not last. One night, Kale's advisor, Lady Sarath, entered the throne room. Her eyes glowed red and her voice was sharp with anger. "She must leave," Sarath said. "The Council of Shadows has seen her light. They say the human will destroy us all." Kyle stood tall, his expression calm but cold. "If they wish to harm her, they will face me first." "You would risk the kingdom for one mortal girl?" Sarath hissed. Kale's voice was steady. "For her, I would risk eternity." That night, the sky over the Obsidian Court turned crimson. Thunder rolled across the dark mountains as the Council of Shadows rose in rebellion. Hundreds of dark figures gathered before the castle gates, their eyes burning like fireflies in the mist. Leora stood beside Kale in the throne hall. "They're coming," she whispered. Kale nodded. "I will stop them." "You must hide." "No," she said firmly. "If this is your curse, then it's mine too now." Kyle looked at her. This simple human girl who had walked into his world and refused to fear it. Something inside him broke and healed at the same time. "I was meant to be alone forever," he said softly. "But you changed that." He touched her cheek gently, his hand cold but his eyes warm with something she had never seen before. Hope. The doors burst open. The council stormed in, their shadows twisting like smoke. "End it, Kyle," Sarath shouted. "Let the curse take what it demands. The mortal must die." Kale drew his sword, a blade of black flame. "No," he said. "The curse ends tonight, but not by her blood." The hall exploded in chaos. Kale fought with inhuman grace, each movement a dance of fury and sorrow. The council struck back with dark fire, shaking the castle walls. Leora watched in horror, knowing she could not help, until the throne began to glow. The cursed throne was feeding on the battle. Its silver vines reached toward Kale, trying to pull him back. Leora suddenly understood. The curse wanted his soul forever. Without thinking, she ran to the throne. Her hand touched the cold stone and a bright light burst from her palm, the same light that had marked her since that night in the street. Kale turned in shock. "Leora, stop!" But she didn't. Her voice echoed through the hall, steady and full of love. "If your curse began with love lost, then let it end with love given." The light spread across the hall, washing over the shadows. The council cried out as their forms dissolved. The throne cracked and shattered, releasing a wave of silver wind. Kale fell to his knees, his sword turning to dust. The red in his eyes faded to silver. The chains of his curse melted away. He was free. When the light faded, Leora was lying on the ground. Kale rushed to her side. "Leora," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Don't leave me now," she smiled weakly. Her skin glowed faintly with light. "Looks like I broke the rules." "You gave everything," he said, holding her hand. She shook her head gently. "No, I only gave what I had to." Her voice grew softer. "You're free now, Kyle. Live." And with that, her body turned into 1,000 silver lights that drifted upward like falling stars. Kyle reached out, but his hands passed through them. "Leora," he cried. The lights faded, leaving behind only one white feather, glowing softly in his palm. When Kale opened his eyes again, he was no longer in the obsidian court. The dark castles were gone. He stood in the park where they first met, beneath a soft dawn sky. The world felt alive again. Birds sang. The air was warm. He looked at his reflection in the pond, no longer the face of a vampire king but a man. Human again, the white feather rested in his hand. He held it close to his heart. "I will find you," he whispered, "even if I must walk through eternity again." A soft breeze passed by carrying the scent of roses. For a moment he thought he heard her laugh, light and distant, but real. He looked up at the morning sun and smiled. Somewhere beyond the veil, in a place between light and night, Leora watched him, her spirit free, her love eternal, and though their worlds had changed, their bond remained, a promise stronger than time written in the stars above.